I address Sam Shamoun from time to time over on my YouTube, not generally on TikTok, or certainly not as much on TikTok. Excuse me. But when I talk about Sam Shamoun over on YouTube, or I respond to one of his videos, he's got, let's say, a lively fan base, and they often come on and give me grief about it, and they're like, you're scared to talk to Sam, you know. So the other day I went and I didn't follow Sam Shamoun, so I started following him to see when he was on live, and I first day get up and there he is. It was around midnight. He's on late at night on YouTube. It's Shamounian is his YouTube channel, and he was complaining about modern translations that take Isaiah 7:14 and translate it as young woman instead of virgin. And so I put in the comments, I said, well, they do that because it actually means young woman. And he jumped on me and said, hey, come on. So I said, here we go. Is people want me on there? Let's get on there. So, so I got on there. And right out the gate, this guy starts calling my mother a whore. This is Sam Shamoun, folks. He's a degenerate scumbag is what he is. And so right out the gate, he's calling my mother a whore because I said that Isaiah 7:14, the word alma, the Hebrew word there, means young woman and not virgin. Right? That apparently makes my mother a whore. Now, what he said, actually, I understand now why he was saying this. I didn't at the time. But for those of you who don't know me, I'm Steve Perry. This is Biblical Anarchy. And we're going to be talking about Isaiah 7:14. I'm going to show why Sam Shamoun is wrong. Even if I'm going to go with his definition of the word alma, but I'm going to show why he's wrong anyway, even if we go by that definition. To start out, let's take a look at Isaiah 7:14. It says, therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, the alma shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. Now the question here is alma virgin, or is alma young woman? That's the matter of dispute. Now, if you go to Strong's Concordance, right, any of the theologically based concordances, dictionaries, whatever, Hebrew lexicons, they're probably, I know Strong's does, it'll say that there are two definitions for the word. The one is young woman, the other is virgin. I disagree with this, and the biggest reason why I disagree with this is, first off, if you go to any of the ones that are not theological, and like Brown, Driver, and Briggs is my preferred one because I'm too poor to buy Hallett, but Brown, Driver, and Briggs, they're Christian, but they're not, they were more progressive, liberal type Christians, but they define it just as young woman. Hallett has it as young woman. Pretty much anyone that doesn't have a theological bent has it as young woman. But the better way to tell it should be young woman is to look at the definition for LM, which is the male version of the term, and the definition of that is just young man. It's not virgin, right? So why would it be virgin for alma if it's not for LM? But I'm going to accept his definition. His definition that he's going with would be Strong's Concordance, thereabouts. For the sake of this video, let's assume that virgin means either young woman that alma means either young woman or virgin. Now, he wanted to play the apologetics game, which is where you go to other places where the word alma appears and try to figure out if the woman is a virgin or not. So he wanted me to read Proverbs 30, which I agree to do. I start reading it. But while I'm reading it, he's talking over me, calling my mother a whore. I mean, just over and over again, calling my mother a whore. This is Sam Shamoun. This is how he is. This is what he does. And so over and over, he's calling my mother a whore. I said, I pointed out to him, just for the record, my mother's a Christian missionary, okay? And I'm not making that up. My father is a pastor, but when I was, I think, 16 years old, he went from being a pastor, they went on the mission field, they went to Panama. So my mother, of course, going with him, they were missionaries. Upstanding people. Of course, Sam Shamoun doesn't know my mother, so I said, hey, let me just tell you, because I'm not the kind that takes offense to this, right? He doesn't know my mother. But let me just tell you who my mother is. Since you're calling her a whore, I let him know she's, a Christian missionary. And while I'm reading from Proverbs, he's talking over me, calling her a whore. And I'm like, you believe this is the inspired word of God, and yet you talk like this over top of me while I'm reading it, right? And so he dumped me. We never got to the verse in question. I think I know why he dumped me. I think because when he was going through and he said Proverbs, I said, that's the one with the snake on a rock, right? And as a truck goes by, sorry for the noise, but I said, that's the one with the snake on a rock, right? I think it bothered him that I knew the proverb, because he probably knew what I was going to do. But let's go to Proverbs 30. We're going to be reading verses 18 and 19, and this is from the English Standard Version. 3 things are too wonderful for me, for I do not understand. The way of an eagle in the sky, the way of a serpent on a rock, the way of a ship on the high seas, and the way of a man with a virgin, as the English Standard Version translates it. That's Alma. And why do they translate it virgin? If we go to the Christian Study Bible, okay, they have a good write-up on this. They say verses 30, 18 through 20. A man is a strong, virile young man, and the young woman is of marriageable age, presumably a virgin. If Proverbs 30, 18, and 19 stand alone, the point might be that the progress of love is as marvelous and mysterious as the motion of the other 3 items, right? So how is it mysterious? Well, the way of an eagle in a sky. You look up in the sky, you see an eagle flying, you don't know where he came from because he doesn't leave a trail or track or anything behind him, right? Now, if the eagle's hopping along on the beach, then you'd see his talon marks and you'd know where he come from. Not mysterious. A serpent on a rock. If the snake is slithering through the grass, he'll be knocking down the grass, bending it over. You'll be able to see the path. You'll see where he came from, probably figure out where he's going. Nothing mysterious about it, but he's on a rock. He doesn't leave a trail, right? And, of course, the way of a ship on the high seas. You look out, and there's a ship out in the distance on the ocean. It's hard to even tell which way it's going, where it came from, right? So these are mysterious things, and the way of a young man with an Alma here would be virgin, right? A young man with it's young love, right? It's 2 people don't really know what they're doing. They're trying to figure it out, find their way. It's mysterious, right? Makes sense. It would be a virgin. It's Alma, though, right? But we're going with Sam. It could be a young woman or a virgin. And here, I would translate it a virgin if I were going with that definition. The problem, read the next verse. This is the way of an adulteress. She eats and wipes her mouth and says, I have done no wrong. Going back to the Christian Study Bible, if Proverbs 30, 18 through 19 stand alone, the point might be that the progress of love is as marvelous and mysterious as the motion of the other 3 items. If verse 20 is connected to the saying, the interpretation is far different. The first 3 things leave no tracks. The man, like the adulteress who wipes her mouth, thinks fornication with the young woman leaves no trace. The adulteress thinks sex is as casual and amoral as a meal. However, in the end, there are consequences, right? So if we read these together, we have another thing, and this is why we might read them together. We have another thing here that leaves no trail, right? The woman, the adulterous woman, she eats her food, wipes her mouth. I didn't eat anything, right? So now, here's the question, because it's Proverbs, right? It's hard, and you have to be careful when trying to get context in Proverbs, because you have a proverb here, a proverb there. Where does one start? Where does another one end? This one looks like it could be tied to the previous one, but it might not be. And if it is, it completely changes our understanding of the word Alma. Alma is a virgin in the first. If the first one's left by itself, it's a virgin probably. At the very least, it's a young, sexually inexperienced woman, But if we add the second one in, then it can't be a virgin. It's an adulterous woman, right? And the point that I'm getting to here, this is why I dreamed of going to this one with Sam Shamoun on the topic of Isaiah 7:14, because this makes the point of how important context is to understanding. Because anytime you have a word that has multiple definitions, take the word fast, right? Could be to run quickly, or it could be to not eat, right? It could be to hold steady. It has different meanings, and we have to see it in the context, just like with Alma here. If the context changes, the meaning of the word changes, right? So if we look at Alma as meaning young woman or virgin, then it's very important the context. So let's go back to Isaiah 7:14, shall we? This gives us some context. It says, therefore, the Lord himself shall give you a sign. Behold the Alma. Now it's going to tell us three things about this Alma that will help us determine if she's a virgin or just a young woman. Okay? The Alma shall conceive. That's what the English Standard Version says. No, it's actually in the past tense. She has conceived, right? She's pregnant. The virgin is pregnant, or the Alma is pregnant, and she will bear a son, and she will call his name Emmanuel. So the three things we know about the Alma in question: one, she's pregnant; two, she's going to have a boy; three, she's going to name the boy Emmanuel. Do any of these things lead you to believe that this is a virgin that is being discussed here? If Sam Shamoun were to meet a young woman who's 8 months pregnant, would he go, clearly she's a virgin, right? No. The context here tells us that it's not talking about a virgin. Now, to be fair, could God, in the eyes of Isaiah, could God impregnate a virgin and cause her to have a baby? I suppose, yeah, why not? But Isaiah would have to specify that, right? He can't just use Alma. There's the word Betulah in Hebrew, which means virgin. If he could even say, though, without that, he could even say, the Alma who has not known a man has conceived, right? That context would tell us it's a virgin. But there's nothing here in the context that would imply that it's a virgin. So why does Sam Shamoun insist that it's a virgin? Well, if we go to Matthew chapter 1, verse 23, behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel, right? So here, this is in Greek. The word is not Alma. Here, the word is, what's the Greek word again? Parthenos. So now, Parthenos is tricky because it means either virgin or young maiden, right? So it's kind of like our other word, except for the primary meaning of our other word is young woman. The secondary meaning would be virgin. Here, the primary meaning would be virgin, and the secondary meaning would be young maiden, right? So it's kind of the same, but here it gets translated virgin. And of course, Sam Shamoun is a Roman Catholic, which I almost hesitate to say that. I went today to look, and I saw Trent Horn does videos with him. So I assume the Catholics embrace and accept. It's amazing to me that the Roman Catholic Church is okay with this guy conducting himself the way he does, and somebody like Trent Horn, who's like the Catholic Answers guy, right? That he does videos with him. So I guess they embrace it. But Sam Shamoun is a Roman Catholic. I wouldn't admit that if I were a Catholic, but I'm not. So he's a Roman Catholic, and he, thinks Mary not only was a virgin when she had Jesus, but remained a virgin for the rest of her life. And so he wants to read virgin back into Isaiah 7:14. But is that what Matthew is saying? This is a good question. Let's go to Matthew chapter 2 and verse, let's see, which verse are we going to look at? Matthew has a weird thing that he does with prophecies, right? And you have a situation. Here we go. In Matthew chapter 2, starting in verse 13, we read about the King Herod wants to kill all the babies, so the angel tells the family, go down to Egypt. They do. After Herod dies, they come back up to the land of Israel, and they go to Nazareth. And in verse 15 of chapter 2, Matthew said, this was to fulfill what the Lord had spoken by the prophet, out of Egypt I called my son. Now this is a reference to, let's see if no, I did not, so let's do it right now. This is a reference to Hosea 11:1. And if we go to Hosea 11:1, sure enough, it says, out of Egypt I called my son. But if we read it in context, ask yourself this. Is he talking about Jesus? Hosea says, when Israel, not Jesus, was a child, I loved him, and out of Egypt I called my son. The more they, not he, the more they were called, the more they went away. They kept sacrificing to the Baalim and burning offerings to idols. Is this talking about Jesus? It says they, it says Israel, it says they, right? Now, we know Israel is called the son of God. God says to Moses in Exodus, go say to Pharaoh, Israel is my son, my firstborn, right? So clearly this is talking about Israel. Jesus never offered sacrifices to Baal. He never worshipped other gods on the mountains. It's obviously not talking about Jesus. So clearly Matthew is just lying and making this up, right? Well, no, not exactly. Notice what Matthew says. This was to fulfill what the Lord had spoken by the prophet. He doesn't say, this is what the prophet foretold, right? He said this was to fulfill what was spoken of by the prophet. Interesting. What does he mean? Now, if we go down to the end of the chapter, the very last verse, 23, it says, and he went and lived in a city called Nazareth, so that what was spoken by the prophets might be fulfilled, that he would be called a Nazarene. Now, there's no prophecy anywhere in the Hebrew Bible that Jesus will be called a Nazarene. It's just not there. So, clearly, again, Matthew is just lying and making it up, right? Well, I used to think so. But I listened to some Christian apologists who actually make a really compelling argument. And now I believe what they're saying. So in the Hebrew Bible, the Messiah is referred to repeated a couple times as the branch. In Hebrew, Netzar, right? Now, the characters in Hebrew are the same consonants. The consonants are the same as they are in Nazareth. Okay? So, what's Matthew doing here? Notice, again, he doesn't say the prophets foretold that he would live in a city of Nazareth. He said, so that what was spoken by the prophets might be fulfilled. And what does this Greek word behind fulfilled mean? It means to fill something up, right? So, it seems like what Matthew is saying here is that the prophets called him the branch, and he lived in Nazareth. Coincidence? Netzar, Nazareth, Matthew says it's not a coincidence, see? This is part of God's plan. So God, speaking through the prophets, they didn't foresee Jesus, right? They prophesied of a coming Netzar, a coming branch, a king that was a branch from the tree of David, right? This is what they prophesied, and God, through his providence, saw fit to put Jesus in Nazareth to give a fuller meaning to what the prophet said. It has the full meaning now. Then we just saw it as the branch. Now we get the full meaning. It's the branch, the Netzar from Nazareth. Okay? This is what Matthew seems to be saying. He's not lying. He's not just making it up here. And if we go back to Hosea 11:1, the same thing. This was to fulfill what the Lord had spoken by the prophet, out of Egypt I called my son. Notice the fuller meaning you get here, because in Hosea, the son of God is Israel, right? Here, the son of God is Jesus. In Hosea, God took Israel out of Egypt from slavery. The house of slaves brought them up to Israel. Here he brings Jesus out of Egypt up to Israel, right? So Matthew is saying not only that God is working in the same way, but now we get a fuller meaning to the Son of God, because Jesus, God's Son, the Son of God, he's here with us. He's among us. This is what Matthew is saying. Matthew is not saying Hosea looked into the future and saw Jesus coming up out of Egypt into Nazareth. What he's saying is that what happened gives fuller meaning to what the prophet said, because it was all planned out by God. Now let's go back to Matthew 1:23. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel. Now, is Matthew saying that Isaiah was looking off into the future and seeing Jesus being born to a woman 700 years in the future? Well, no, Matthew's not stupid, okay? If we go back to Isaiah 7:14, start in verse 10. It says, "Again the Lord said to Ahaz, ask a sign of the Lord your God. Let it be deep as Sheol or as high as heaven." So God has promised something to Ahaz here, and Isaiah says, ask a sign from God. He'll do it. He'll give you this sign. He'll show you that he's going to do what he told you he's going to do. Just ask him for a sign, anything you want, as high as heaven, low as Sheol, right? But Ahaz said, "I will not ask, and I will not put the Lord to the test." So Ahaz doesn't ask for a sign. Now let me ask you this. If he were going to ask for a sign, do you think he'd say, "Let a child be born to a virgin in 700 years"? No, because Ahaz isn't stupid. He would know he's not going to be there to see that, right? This can't be a sign to Ahaz if it's going to happen 700 years later. It goes on, verse 13, and he said, this is Isaiah, "Hear then, O house of David, is it too little for you to weary men, that you weary my God also? Therefore, the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel." It's not virgin, folks. It's young woman. It's talking about the birth of someone, anyone. Now, there are good candidates. I'm not going to get into that. That's neither here nor there. But because it's not actually the woman having the baby that's a sign, and it's not even the baby himself that's a sign. If you go to verse 15, we get the sign. "He shall eat curds and honey when he knows how to refuse evil and choose the good." So it's what the boy eats when he's a couple years old. That's the sign to Ahaz, okay? So the boy being born and making it to a certain age where he eats certain foods, this is a sign to Ahaz, not something that happens 700 years in the future. And again, Matthew's not stupid. He knows this. But he uses this, "Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son," the same way he uses the other prophecies. Listen to verse 22. "All this took place to fulfill what the Lord had spoken by the prophet." He doesn't say this happened to fulfill what Isaiah foretold. He doesn't say this happened so that Isaiah's prophecy would come true. He says it fulfills the prophecy. It gives it a fuller meaning. And if we go back to Isaiah 7, God is saying to Ahaz, don't make a deal with Assyria. I'm with you. I got your back. I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to get you through this crisis. These two kings you're worried about, they're going to be dead and gone, and you're going to be fine, right? But Ahaz doesn't want the sign from God. So God says, here's the sign. I'll just give you the sign. And the sign is a child's going to be born. His name is God is with us, right? Here, Matthew says that there's a fuller meaning. Excuse me, let me get a drink. Matthew says that there's a fuller meaning here, right? God is with us. Just like in Isaiah's day, when he gave a child to King Ahaz as a sign that he was with them, God today is giving us Jesus, a sign that he is with us. That's what Matthew's saying. It gives a fuller meaning. Now, if you're a Christian and you believe that Jesus is the Son of God, that he's literally God with us, then it gives even fuller meaning to Emmanuel, right? At the time, it was just God's got our back. Now, God is literally here with us, right? If that's it's not my take, but if that's your take, yeah, that's even fuller meaning. It's fulfilling. It's filling it with meaning, okay? Now, back to Proverbs 30 and how much the meaning of Alma changed when we changed the context. Hey, buddy, you want to join as a guest? Just hold on. I will bring you on. I'm almost done. But, yeah, so in the context of Proverbs 30, things changed, okay? At first, it seemed to mean virgin, but then when we read the next verse, it couldn't mean virgin, and we don't know which is the context, which proverb goes with what, right? Now go back to Isaiah 7:14. All of the context implies that this is just a regular young woman giving birth. But when we come to Matthew chapter 1, the context completely changes, right? So if you go to verse 18, it says, "Now the birth of Jesus Christ took place in this way when his mother Mary had been betrothed to Joseph. Before they came together," before they had relations, "she was found to be with child from the Holy Spirit." Now, in this context, the word Parthenos, whose primary meaning is virgin, so we should expect virgin anyway, The secondary meaning is young maiden. Which way should we translate this word? Well, we have no choice but to translate a virgin, because the author has specifically said that she hasn't known her man. She hasn't consummated her relationship with Joseph. Going back to Isaiah 7:14, though, it's young woman. Even the word virgin here, the young woman versus virgin, gets fuller meaning in Matthew, right? It gets filled with meaning. Folks, I'm not a Christian. I got no skin in the game to defend Matthew here. But people attack Matthew constantly. I have done so myself when I didn't know any better. But Matthew is doing so. Whether you believe what Matthew is saying or not, respect the text, right? Let's go with what Matthew's actually saying. And Sam Shamoun doesn't do that. Sam Shamoun wants to read this as Isaiah foresaw the birth of Jesus. But that's not what's happening here. Isaiah did not foresee the birth of Jesus, but Matthew is saying God is working in the same way, and what he's doing now gives fuller meaning to what the prophet said back then. Let's see. I got, let's see if I can bring you up here. I haven't, okay, I haven't done this before, so, but we'll see if it goes through. But anyway, this is what Matthew is doing here with the text, and it's pretty clear. Now, back to Sam Shamoun. Why did Sam Shamoun call my mother a whore? I didn't know at first. Like, it didn't make any sense to me at the time, and then it dawned on me. Because I was saying that Alma means young woman, that means that Isaiah said that a young woman will conceive, and so he thought that I was calling Mary, the mother of Jesus, a whore. All right, that she's had sex with other men, whatever the case may be, or that she had sex with Joseph before she was married, whatever the case may be. That's not what I was doing. Clearly, you can believe that Isaiah 7:14 says that a young woman will conceive, and still believe that Matthew is perfectly fine in using it and saying virgin, right? Because it's the context that dictates virgin here, and it's the context that dictates young woman there, right? Now, do I believe that Mary is a virgin? No. Why not? Because virgins don't have babies, and she had a baby. So no, I don't believe she was a virgin. But that's neither here nor there. I don't think anything ill of Mary. We have very little information about her, and I have no reason to think ill of Mary. But I do think that Sam Shamoun is a disgrace to the Roman Catholic Church, because I do watch a couple Roman Catholic apologists, Trent Horn, Jimmy Akin, who's the guy, How to Be a Christian, I think his channel is. He's a funny guy, fascinating guy, and these are all very nice, at least they come across that way on YouTube, very nice, kind, considerate, gracious people. And then you've got Sam Shamoun. It's like, I'm sorry, he's a complete scumbag. I don't know how else to put it. Like, he literally attacks people in the comments. If a woman comments and disagrees with him, she's a whore or a Jezebel. If a man comments and disagrees with him, he's a son of a whore or he's an effeminate man. And I really think it comes down to Sam Shamoun not having control of his emotions, right? I think he's a very emotional person. You might say a bit effeminate himself. He tries to cover it with toxic masculinity, right? But he just he's a very angry guy, and so he you know what Sam Shamoun does extraordinarily well? There's a verse that Christians like to point to a lot that says, if any man is in Christ, he's a new creation. The old man passes away, behold, a new man. Sam Shamoun does an excellent job proving that verse wrong. If you disagree with me, you can leave a comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, share it on social media, subscribe to the channel, whatever you do, don't just sit there, do something. And yes, I'm on TikTok. I don't usually do that on TikTok.